Hey guys, it's Luca from Learning MTG, and today's going to be a little bit of a different kind of video. Basically, like every year around my birthday, I like to write a little bit, like a little piece, where I just like to talk about where I'm at in life, maybe what I've learned over the course of my life, and maybe what I've learned most over the course of the past year. Um, so I thought, now since I've got a YouTube channel, why don't I do like a video version of this instead of a written version? Um, Usually the topic I'm most interested and passionate about is like how do we live great lives? And I think that usually kind of gets simplified into how do we be happy? And I'm also always like interested in how to teach people that. So for me, like a big part of life is mastering that skill set, how to have a great life, and then eventually learning how to teach it to other people. um, that's just something I'm passionate about and something that I really want to do for whatever reason. um, so this video will be no different. um, and one of the things I've been learning about recently is Ho'oponopono. I was introduced to it a while ago, and it just keeps reoccurring in my life, and I keep kind of going back to it, back to the teaching of Ho'oponopono. Um, and one of the ways that one of the terms for it is like cleaning. So I want to talk about cleaning for a second. So I think we all understand intuitively like the benefits of cleaning, whether it's like cleaning your body. If you go a few days without having a shower, you feel dirty and feel kind of uncomfortable, and then you take a shower and you feel great. Or maybe you haven't brushed your teeth in a while, you get that clean feeling of your teeth. Or maybe your apartment's really messy and dirty, and then you finally take the time to vacuum it and clean it, and you can really feel that difference. And what is it about that? What is it about cleaning that is so important to us as humans and so appealing? What is it about being dirty that makes us feel so uncomfortable? And then it's like a sense of relief once things are set back to the way they should be. Or another version of this is like if you've got a really messy space, like my space is really messy right now and it's a little bit uncomfortable. Um, and if it were all organized and cleaned up and everything was put away, I would feel a lot better. What is it about that? I think, one of the things I've talked about and before or written about is I think there are kind of like these threads that go through life. And so when you find a pattern or a dynamic in one area of life, it's not unique to that one area of life. It carries over in all areas of life. Basically, it's just in a different disguise in each part of your life. So I think this idea of cleaning is going to be helpful in talking about what I want to talk about. Because we understand it in certain aspects of our lives. We understand why we want to brush our teeth. We understand why we want to keep our spaces clean. Why we might want to keep, I don't know, like a pool clean. We don't want it to be like moldy or something. We want to keep our food clean. We don't want to eat moldy food. We want to eat like fresh food. So what is it about this thing? I think ultimately it's kind of teaching us to keep our minds clean, which keep our thoughts clean, keep our spirit clean. I know spirit and spirituality is like a dirty word now, so I'll try to avoid it. But you know, I think it's ultimately trying to teach us that lesson. Um, so I find it so weird. Like I recently made a video about meditation, and I feel like no one gives a fuck about meditation, which is crazy. Like no one cares about meditation. Everyone kind of knows about it. Yeah. It sounds cool. Yeah, it sounds fun. Nah, I don't really want to do it. I've heard a million different reasons why people don't want to do it. Um, I can't just sit still. Um, Whatever. Like bad thoughts come to my mind when I do it. Whatever. I've heard all sorts of different things, and it's just like, I think I think one of the big reasons why people don't do meditation is because they haven't felt the difference. Like one of the reasons you brush your teeth, one of the reasons you take the shower is because you felt the difference. You know what it feels like to be dirty, you know what it feels like to be clean. And I think with meditation, people haven't felt the difference. They've been so deeply steeped in their current frame of mind and their current patterns of mind that they don't even know what it's like to go back. I think people have forgotten what their mind was like when they were a child, or what their mind was like in moments of bliss and clarity. And people have kind of forgot. So, yeah, who cares about meditation? If you think that, the way that your mind is working and the way that you feel is going to always kind of be like that, yeah, you won't care about meditation. So, I think that's pretty much the main point. I think a lot of people don't know the difference, or they've forgotten the difference. Maybe I'll just talk about my experience. I can remember, I can remember being very young. Maybe when I was 4 or 5, and I remember life was much more spontaneous, right? Like if you watch a young kid, they'll make a game out of anything. I remember I was like going on a walk um, at Stanford, just like going through the campus. I always do my walk every day, and I saw these kids, and there was like a fountain, but the fountain was dry for whatever reason. Maybe they're doing like maintenance on it, so there's no water in it, and the kids were like using it as a racetrack. And I just thought, wow, like kids will just take anything and turn it into something, you know? They'll just take any situation and turn it into like a game or turn it into play. It's like very spontaneous. There's not like they're not kids aren't doing like the same thing every day or every. Um, they don't have like a regimen or whatever. In addition, they don't have lots of worries and anxieties. They're not super worried unless adults make them worry about what their grades are. They're not worried about what they're going to do next Tuesday. They're not worried about what they're going to eat for dinner. They're not worried about what happened a few days ago for the most part. And so I know like when I was young, I was more like clear in my mind. I was more spontaneous. I did have less anxieties. And then as I got older, as I kind of I basically collected beliefs and ideas and concepts, a lot of it through school. Through school, you learn like mathematics and you learn all these different ideas about, I don't know, literature and social studies and science. Science is a big one. Okay, now I understand how evolution works, and I understand how the mind works, and now I understand how psychology works. You're basically building up all of these concepts and ideas, beliefs, and you can think of it almost like having a house and you're just filling it full of shit. You're just like filling the house and it's bursting at the seams. You can't barely move in there. It's full of stuff. You gotta at some point like take stuff out. We spend so much of our lives learning new things, but we don't take a lot of thought into what are we unlearning. I think what people don't realize is when you learn a new concept or when you construct a new belief, you're limiting the scope of your life. In our society, we put so much value on learning. Like, we basically equate learning with progress. Learning concepts. So, if I learn how to do machine learning and I learn 5 different programming languages and I learn, different mathematical concepts and I learn more about how the body works, I learn more science, like people would think I'm like moving forward, but you're not only moving forward, you're also in a sense you're restricting your view of the world, like for example, in our society a lot of people have this very deep belief in let's say evolutionary psychology. I don't want to get too crazy, right? Like so people will basically take anything that a human does from the perspective of evolutionary psychology and they'll say, okay, this is happening for these evolutionary reasons, or the body has these functions for these evolutionary reasons, and everything gets put into that frame of reference. What you don't realize is you're missing a lot of creativity. You're missing a lot of other theories and reasons for why things could be. Um, Let me try to think of a better example. Well, one of the big examples actually that comes up is like learned helplessness, right? So if you guys have ever studied in psychology the concepts of learned helplessness, they took dogs, I think, and they put them in a cage and they shocked them. Um, and the dogs couldn't get out, so they're like trying to get out, but they couldn't get out. They're getting shocked. They just kept doing this to the dogs. Eventually, the dogs realized there's no use in trying to jump out of the cage because there's no way out. So they just take it and they just kind of like lay down and they get shocked. Then what they did to these dogs that learned this is they opened up the cage so the dogs could get out. But now the dogs that are getting shocked, they're just laying down because they learned how to be helpless. So I think this is like a really nice metaphor for how learning new concepts and ideas can actually restrict you and hold you back. You have to be able to see both sides of the coin, right? So when you learn a concept, when you construct a belief, it's only one side of a coin. You have to be flexible in mind and be able to go back. So, um, let me try to think of a good example. So maybe you learn like a really cool, maybe you learn about supply and demand, right? Okay, now I understand supply and demand, and now I'm going to think about this economic situation. And I'm going to use the concept of supply and demand. You have to also be able to flip it. You have to also think of like, what is the non-supply and demand version of this? What are the non-supply and demand reasons for this? You know? And there could be, maybe there's social reasons that people make these decisions. Maybe there's psychological reasons that people make these decisions. Maybe people have certain heuristics that are not based on supply and demand. So you have to be flexible in mind. And let's go back to kind of cleaning. I think I kind of got lost on a tangent, but Ho'oponopono is what I started with. So I've been learning about Ho'oponopono again, and the real concept of Ho'oponopono is to clean. It's to get rid of your memories or to get rid of the beliefs that you have in your mind, to unlearn. You also see this in the Taoist teachings. Um, you'll see this in those kind of like ancient Chinese teachings, which is like you need to empty your cup in order to learn new things. You need to kind of forget and unlearn what you have in your mind already. But I think basically it's just very important to start to do this because, in my opinion, what's really going to make the biggest impact on your life, on your happiness, on your success is going to be unlearning things. This is the most important thing you can do, and doing things like meditation, and I'd say like more spiritual practices to basically unlearn these things in your mind is going to be the way to do this. There's not really many other ways to unlearn. So I really encourage people to do this and to see what life can be like when your mind is clear, when you're not clouded by your previous ideas of things, when you're not so crushed by the weight of so many different ideas and concepts, and when you collect so many, they inevitably conflict with each other. And that can be a huge burden when you have conflicting beliefs. So in my life, I remember, like, okay, I'm a kid, I'm really young, I'm probably like most kids. Life is very joyful and spontaneous. As you get older, you build up all these ideas, and you're just like, it's like a weight. You've just got this weight on you, and you've got all these anxieties. You're worried, okay, I got to follow this rule, this rule, this rule, this rule. I got to follow all these rules, and I've got to follow all these theories that explain how these things happen, and it's just like a maze that you have to go through with your mind all the time. There's no room for spontaneity. There's no real room for not knowing. There's no room for, hey, I don't know how anything works. There's no room for surrendering into this sense of, I'm just going to trust that things work out, right? Like, how much of our lives do we need to plan everything out to a T? I don't think that's the way to go through life. I think it's much more beneficial, profitable, efficient to not plan for everything, to play things by ear, to go with the flow of life. So yeah, I think if you wanted to graph like the trajectory of my life, I think I was like not a lot of beliefs as a kid. So many in my adolescence, 20s. Then, as I eventually started to realize, like, what really worked for me was, having less concepts, less beliefs, less of I know and more of I don't know. So, I don't know is, I think, the way to go through life. And that's kind of how I came in as a kid. I didn't really know anything. And that was my stance. Like, hey, I don't know how this stuff works. And then in kind of like my teenage years and my 20s is like, okay, I know how everything works, or I need to know how things work. So that's just kind of my experience. I really, really encourage people to try to clear their minds of the junk, right? You take a shower every day, you brush your teeth every day. Why don't you cleanse your mind every day? Well, like, how many shitty, unhelpful beliefs do you have in your mind that are just holding you back? Yeah, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it's kind of a weird one, and I hope to see you guys in the next video.